Okay. Lord Jesus, have mercy. Okay. So here we are. Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome in, welcome in. We are working on the disappearing 9 batch today. And let me move some things so that we can get started. But I will go ahead. I got stuff in my way. Let me move this stuff. Hey, Coco, how are you doing, darling? So let me move some things because clearly, um, so let me see where we're gonna start with this. I have everything over prepped, planned, and prepared. So welcome to Sunday Service, Black Sewing Network. We are still just waiting for a couple more people to come in. So welcome, welcome, everyone. Hey, how are you doing, Tammy? You know, I had to make sure I got here on time. I was like, ugh. Okay, let's see. So we'll get everything set up right here so that you can see it. And we'll talk through the process of this first, and then we'll go from there. So we'll just give everyone a couple more minutes. Hello, hello, hello. I went to a quilt show yesterday, so let me, since I know I'm not going today, let me take that off. So again, we are working on a disappearing 9 patch. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, Cake, how are you? So we're working on disappearing 9 patch today. Excuse me, disappearing 4 patch. I'm gonna get this right. Disappearing 4 patch today because some people have asked me to do the 9 patch, so I'm waiting to do the 9 patch with them. But we're gonna do a 4 patch. So in order to get the 4 patch done, there are a couple things that we need, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Hey, Joseph, we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go along. So these are the blocks that I'm going to be using. So it's these black ones and then these lime green ones. So if you can get the theme, you get the theme. So in honor of Black Sewing Network, we're using their colors today. So I cut these to be 6.5 inches square. You can use 5.5 inches. You could go as small as 2 inches. It's going to give you a teeny tiny block. Not necessarily what you want to do, but you can do it. You could use something as big as 10-inch blocks, 12-inch blocks. It's just going to give you a bigger block overall, and then you don't need as many, if you will, if you're making a big quilt. So it just depends on the look that you're going for. But the great thing is you can use any size blocks that you want. So let's get started again. So welcome to Sunday Service, Black Sewing Network, Quilters Edition. The Quilters are taking over. So my name is Jennifer Hill, and I am an educator, worked for the Philly school system for over 30 years, and I have been sewing for well over 40, almost 50 years. I started out with garments, and then eventually I got into the quilting, and I've been quilting for about 20 years now. Not consistently. I've been picking it up a little bit more consistently lately because I got my long arm and I can get rid of some of those whips and UFOs that I have. So to bring the love of quilting to the Black Sewing Network, we have been going live to share the love of quilting with you. So we will be working on the disappearing 9 patch. I have my trusty dusty Husqvarna Viking machine that has been my rider for over 20 years. It is here on the side, but I am focused on the fabric right now. So you can use any combination of fabrics that you like for a disappearing 9 patch or for most quilts. It is up to you. It could be bright colors, they could be mute colors, blacks and whites, anything that you would like. This is your quilt. So you're deciding how complex you want it to be, how colorful. That is totally up to you. So if you have a lot of Ankara prints in your stash and they are all around a certain size, absolutely cut those down into 5-inch squares, 6-inch squares, and put them together to make a 4-patch. Then from there, we can, what will we say, cut it up, or we can hack it. So here is the 4-patch. This is the one that I am using. I'm using 2 colors, and so then it is light dark on one side and then the reverse at the bottom. So we're going to stitch our blocks together. We'll show you that process. Once we stitch those blocks together, we're going to cut them up. And when we cut them up, we're going to come up with a design. So I did 2 different ones, and I'm only going to focus on one today, but I just wanted to show you the traditional one, which is this. And so this is the traditional hack of the disappearing 4-patch. So it starts off like this. We cut it up, and then it will end up looking like this. And again, you can decide how you want those colors to look, where you want those colors to be dominant. That is totally up to you. The great thing about this is that placement also matters. I can either make these strips in here wider, or I can make them narrower. That is totally up to you as well. But the great thing is that this traditional disappearing 4-patch, if you go onto the website and you look up disappearing 4-patch, this is traditionally what you would see. And there are 9 segments to this. So we have these 4 blocks here, 2 black, 2 green. And then there are these strips, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. And then there is this center square, which still remained a 4-patch. So when we cut those up, you get what's called, you went from a 4-patch to a 9-patch, because you would have 1, 2, let me put this down. You would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 segments. And then you put them all back together and you get this. So I decided I didn't want to do the traditional. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So my little bit different, I didn't trim that one. I won't want to use that one, is this. And this is my little bit different. So it still has that 4-patch in the center. So you see that here, but I don't have as many twists and turns with it. So I liked this one better, and I wanted to use this one for my disappearing 9-patch quilt instead of the traditional. So this is the one that we're working on today. So I already have 3 of those trimmed up, ready to go. But let's look at the process for what we do. In order to get the 4-patch, we are going to take this. Hey, Miss Avis, I missed you yesterday for the quilt show. Hey, Sabs, how are you doing, darling? And what we do is we lay out our fabrics. And this is just so that we get an idea of how they're going to be laid out. So this is what the 4-patch is going to look like. And you may say, well, Jen, it's in a different direction. Doesn't matter, because if I turn this clockwise or counterclockwise, it still matches up. So I just need my squares to be like this. If I'm only making one, let's say you're following me today and you're like, I can cut out 4 pieces of fabric and I can make this disappearing 4-patch in the same amount of time that she can make all the ones that she's going to make. If you wanted to follow along with me, you could get 4, and we'll do a couple different rounds of this just so that if you're going to follow along and practice, you can as well. So otherwise, what I would do is I would stack all of mine and then I would work from there. But I'm going to show you why I do it this way. So let's move these out the way for right now, all my different variations that I have. So again, we're going for this look. With these four fabrics, I'm going to take the ones on my right and just flip them over, right sides together, to the ones on the left. Hi, Tom, how are you? Then I'm going to line these up, take them to my machine, and I am going to do a 1/4 inch stitch. You'll notice the green is on the top with this one. The black is on the top for this one. I'm going to leave it like this. Okay. So when we get this done, cut my little threads off. I'm going to lay this back out similar to the way that it was before. And I'm just going to open this up. And you'll see it's still a 4-patch. But notice I didn't cut that thread that was in between these two. It locks them in together. And if I'm doing a bunch of them at the same time, I can keep them together in sets. So I like to do it this way. Again, if you want to cut them separately, that's up to you. So now we can flip them from top to bottom. The seams need to line up. And I like to press my seams to one side, usually to the darker side. Doesn't always work out that nicely for us. And I like to use my 2 fingers to get them to nest, to butt up right against each other for those seams, and then I clip it. Okay? If I nest them the way that they're supposed to be nested, that will should guarantee that I will have a corner that lines up as pretty as this one did. So that's the goal. I leave the clip there because, yup, I have a tendency to put my things down from time to time. And so to avoid putting them down from time to time, and then I have to re-nest them, I can just leave that clip right there. I'm going to make sure that the ends line up, take them back to my machine, and do another 1/4 inch stitch. So whenever we are doing quilting, 9 times out of 10, we are using a 1/4 inch stitch. Sometimes you might hear a scant 1/4 inch. That's a little less than a 1/4 inch. Sometimes you'll hear, and that's rare, you might hear a 1/4 inch. And if you're making something like a bag, you might hear 1/2 inch. But usually everything is a 1/4 inch. So then when we pull these apart, we have a perfect 4-patch. You'll notice I did not iron mine because it was only going in that one corner and I wasn't worried about that. But if you prefer to press them out, you absolutely can press them as you go. Hey, Nina. Hey, hot girl. How are you doing, darling? I was running down the steps this morning trying to find a Black Sewing Network shirt. And of course, because I wear them so much, they were all downstairs in the laundry area. So I didn't feel like going all the way back upstairs to iron the shirt. So I ironed it with this, which is my big Aliso iron. So I ironed it with this. And then, of course, because my t-shirt needs a little bit of water, I added a little bit of water to it. So traditionally, I don't put I usually don't put water in my iron whenever I am quilting. I usually use a dry iron, but I'm also lazy and frugal, and I'm not going to change. I'm not going to dump the water out if it's in there. So that's the only reason why there is steam in there, but it's not the end of the world if there is. Just be aware that sometimes if you use a lot of steam, a lot of water, a lot of starch, your fabric could shrink. And if your fabric shrinks, it will change the measurement of possibly the final square. So just be aware of that. Most people will at least iron and starch their fabric before they cut it out for the initial blocks. And then that way there's minimal shrinkage as they're going along and piecing everything together. I am doing absolutely wonderful. Okay, so here we are. We have our 4 patch. Now we need to make some cuts. I am going to, these are 6.5 inch. I was like, I'm not finding 3 1/4. So I'm working with 3. Now, part of that 3 works anyway, because 6.5 inch, you lost 1/4 in the seam anyway. So this block really should measure 6 1/4 right now. And then when we get rid of this end, it'll be exactly 6. So we're going with 6. So we're going to start from the seam, and we're going to use half of 6, which is 3. So I'm going to take my time, use my ruler. Now this ruler is a 6.5 inch ruler, so I need to be careful that I'm not using the side that has a 1/2 inch, because that will throw off my measurements. But I'm lining that exact line for the 4.5 inch, for the 4 patch, and I'm giving myself 1, 2, 3 inches on this side. Measure twice, cut once. Because you can only cut once. Then you messed it up if you didn't do it right. So you measure, you make sure everything is right, and then you cut. Okay. I'm going to flip this just because I prefer to sit, and I prefer to just flip it rather than doing it a different way. I do have a turntable from Big Mat that I do use, but I like them for smaller blocks. 1, 2. Measure twice, cut once. Hey, Carmen, how are you? Now, we won't discuss the fact that you know that I am not in my favorite place. And that's because somebody has me here. But we won't talk about her, right? Telling between Carmen and Terrence, I don't know who's worse. But I'm here. So we're gonna take one more cut. So we're just doing 3 inches, and we're gonna get a perfect 6 inch 4 patch by the time we finish. Okay. Oh, here we go. Now, for the sake of argument, I'm just going to put this back together again. Okay. So here's the 4 patch. Which way am I going? This way. So here's the 4 patch. We lift this up because now we've cut, and we have these segments. Easier than most other things. All I need to do is turn this 190 degree, And when I push everything else back together again, you can now see that it has become this. So as easy as that, I now have a new block. I now need to put the block back together again so that it looks finished like that one. Now the tricky part with this was, right now, if I butt everything up against each other, everything is even and nicely lined. This strip and this strip have nothing that's going to be done to them just yet. These three pieces will. I'm going to end up stitching this to this side, this to this side, to come up with one piece. And when I do that, I'm going to lose a 1/4 inch from each of these sides. So it's a half. So when I put these together, this unit is going to be an inch shorter, a 1/2 inch on either side, shorter than this. So let me show you what that looks like, just so that you can see my twisted thinking. So it's going to look like this when we put it together. So you're not wrong when you have this hanging over. This is that 1/2 inch on either side, that whole inch that you lost from the seams that are here. And that's fine because we're just going to trim them off. So be careful when you're putting this together. And I'm giving you that warning now because when you see it later and you're trying to fudge it together, it's not going to go and it's not meant to go. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Yes, ma'am, it is easy peasy. Again, we're going to take one side. We're going to make sure that we line up the seams. I use my fingers to kind of mush them in place. Everything's nice, straight, even. Take it to my machine. Now, one of the reasons why I like the chain piece is because I don't have to have a million tails hanging out from my blocks when I finish stitching. It saves on thread, but I'm only doing the one for right now, so we're gonna have a million tails. Okay, and we'll open that up. Nice and pointy. And then we'll do the other side. Okay. Line everything up. That's the key to that. Make sure that those seams line up. Clip them if that makes sense to you. If you prefer to use pins. I have been sewing for so long that I am living for the clips. And when they were first in Joann's, and I was like, what? How much? I was like, nah, I ain't getting them clips. I'm using pins. And then when I finally went out and bought the clips, I was like, I don't know why I should be mad at myself for not using those a long time ago. Okay, so one of the other things that you will notice, which is usually something that I don't do, I wanted the thread to show up a little bit better, so I opted for black. Traditionally, it's rare that I'll use black, and part of it was because, again, I'm being lazy. I'm actually making a garment and it required black thread. But usually I would not use black. Usually I would use like a white, a cream, or a gray. The back of your fabric, most cotton fabrics are printed on. So it starts off like a white fabric, and then they print the print on one side. It tends to bleed through to the other side. But you can kind of sort of see what that original color was. So a gray would go really nice with this and then go nice with this side. And what happens is that when you pull apart the colors, you don't see the thread. That's why we tend to go with like the grays, the whites, and the beiges. With the greens, wherever they meet up, if I pull a little hard on this, I can see it. It's a little hard for you to see it. You can see the black thread. The good thing about quilts are you're not really pulling them to see that thread like you would with fabric. So typically, you could get away with any color thread with a quilt because you don't have that tension that you would when you have a garment. Now, if I make a loose dress and, like Nikki's oversized puff sleeve dress that I love to make, if I make that, I can use any thread I want because I'm not going to pull on the seams because it's too big. But if I'm making something that's a little bit more fitted, then I don't want to use a thread that I can pull and see, like let's say a pink with this, because then everybody's going to see that I use pink thread. But in a quilt, sometimes it doesn't matter. So that's why I say, like, you can use up them bobbins. And then if you are doing something that has a lot of different colors, nobody really cares because it's just going to match in with the quilt anyway. Okay. So here we are. It looks like there are two 4-patches put together, but this is the 4-patch in the center. These are the two pieces that are on, that when we flipped it gave us this checkerboard look. Make sure I have the right sides to the right sides, because let me tell you, I could mess something up. Okay, so here, see how these edges are past this. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to square it up, and I'll show you how we're going to square it up. What's important is that you don't take this and line up the ends, because if you do that, it's going to throw this off by a 1/2 inch. So you want to make sure that you still line up the seams. So we're going to just take our time, line those seams up. Again, I like to mush it with my fingers a little bit just to make sure that it's butted up there nice and evenly, and clip. Because it just makes sense to go ahead and do it. Make sure it's going in the right direction. And I know it's going in the right direction because if green is on this side, black should be on this side. So even though I twisted it around, I can still double check. And again, it's important to double check before you start stitching, because you don't want to have to seam rip if you don't have to. So this still looks the way it's supposed to. Let's take it to the machine. I know, remember, that I have that 1/2 inch left over. So I'm holding this with one hand. I'm just going to go ahead and put my foot down. I'm going to hold this with one hand. I can either use a clip if I like, or I could just hold it with the hand. That's up to you. Take it to my machine, and let's do a 1/4 inch. Heather, how are you? So again, just for anyone who's just coming in, my name is Jennifer Hale. I am an educator and a sewist / quilter. I am here for the Black Sewing Network Sunday Service Live. Quilters Edition, the quilters are taking over. So we are working on a disappearing 9-patch. I keep saying that, right? Because I'm used to saying it. A disappearing 4-patch. We're working on a disappearing 4-patch. And just going through the mechanics of how to make that 4-patch. And again, I will go through, I will go through those steps again, just so that everyone is clear, because it's repetitive. And so you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. But we're going to take a look at the layout after we square this one up. Because of course I did enough. Just knock stuff off the table. I did enough just to make sure that we have all that as well. Okay. Another tip that most quilters will do is that especially because we don't use a lot of steam when we are using our iron. Some people do, but just if you're not, we press the seams while they're closed and then we open them up. It helps to make everything lay a little flatter when you do it that way. And again, you can press your seams open or to one side. That's up to you. There is a school of thought for many people that when they press on the one side, when they open them up, it takes a little bit of effort, and I'm with them. It takes a little bit of effort to do that, and I'm not trying to do all that. So I like pressing them to one side. However, I will say this, if I'm working with a lot of triangles, their their seams tend to meet at a certain point. And so because they meet at that point, what happens is it gets bulky. And when the seam gets bulky, it tends to raise up and it just makes it hard to sew through, especially if you're quilting and you have to quilt over that area. So opening the seams up will sometimes make it a little bit flatter so you don't have that problem. You know, in my mind, I said, nobody's going to find me on YouTube. Okay. So again, I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to line it up either with this line, depending on the ruler, or I can line it up with this line. But the key is to line it up. If you line it up and your seams are straight, it'll line up along the edge. It'll also line up along those seams. And you want to, it should be about 3 inches. So we should be able to get the 3-inch mark, line that up. Again, measure twice, cut once. So take your time to do that, lining up. And then we're going to cut off that excess 1/2 inch. So now straighten out that side, and we'll do the same thing to the other. The top and the bottom were not overlaps, so you don't have to do those. But if you have a squaring ruler, you could square up the whole thing. This block for me should measure 11.5 inches. So if I use my ruler that I have for this, I can also make sure that that's true too. And I'll show you that one. So here's this one. This is a 15-inch ruler. And I can line everything up at 11.5 just to make sure that it's 11.5, which it is. And if it's a little off, not a problem, because I can fudge it if it's like 1/8 of an inch or less off. Sometimes 1/4 inch, depending on the fabric, but I try to get them within 1/8 of an inch to exact as I possibly can because I don't want to do too much pulling. Okay. This one is, did I do that? Okay. So when now you put these together, you're going to get a look that looks like that. So you can have it look like this, like a checkerboard look, or it can look like this, which is more like a puzzle piece look. Which means that I will get 2 different types of squares in here. This is not done. Let's use this one. And it would be nice if all the greens were in the center. And you can kind of see that plus sign that it makes. So all of these are kind of centering this. And then here is the plus sign that is here for that. So you make that decision at that point. Like, what do you want this to look like? Do you want a primary design and then something that makes a secondary design? Or do you want them all to go in the same direction? And it still gives that plus sign, but see how now they're like checkerboardish? So it looks like that. And they're all the blacks are going this way, all my greens are going that way, and it gives it this look. So I can make that decision which one I like better for this final product. Okay. So totally up to you to decide which way you want it to go. Thank you. So you can also make decisions that this can be long. So right now it's 11.5 inches. I could add a border to this and I can go as long as 5 or 6 blocks and I can make this a table runner. So I don't have to make a quilt. I can make a table runner. I can take this block and build it out with borders and I can make this a pillow. I can block this out and I can make this the front of a tote bag and the back of a tote bag. So, and what I mean by blocking this out is I'm just using extra strips of fabric, whatever I want that fabric to be, to make it go around it, to make it a bigger block, to set it off. So this is the focus point for my bag. And then I have whatever's going to go around it being the, the outside. So I can use this. And that's a great way to use what we like to call in the quilting community orphan blocks. So an orphan block is like it's like a leftover block once you finish whatever the project is and you got this one block and you're like, what do I do with it? And so then you can take it and turn it into a pillow for the quilt. You can take it and turn it into a piece for let's say a part of a placemat. So this could be here. I could add 2 darker pieces on either side. So I can show you from a placemat that I made. If I take this placemat, this is the block here in the center. This now would be the block and I can build it out to make this a placemat. So it's totally up to you where you want to go from this. And it depends on how much scrap fabric you have and what your ambitious goal is. You can make this be whatever you want it to be. So I have about 16 blocks that I can make. Most of them are already made, but we'll go through the process again of what we did, just again in case there's anybody who's following along and said that they want to try it out. And then I will put some more of these together. So I have these 1, 2, 3. Let me keep all the ones that are together. I mean, that are finished together, because 2 seconds after I do this, ask me if I'll be able to find them. So again, we're starting off with a 4-patch. The 4-patch is made using whatever size blocks you want to make. And I think what I'll do is I'll do 2 of them just to show you the chain piecing. So we'll do 2 at a time. And 2 at a time is the same as doing any multiple. So it doesn't have to be 2. Okay. So the 4-patch would look like this. And again, this is up to you. You do not have to use just green and black, red and orange, white and purple. It's up to you. You could also use 4 different fabrics, 4 different colors. You could use 8 different colors. You could use whatever scraps you like to create this. It is totally up to you what you want this to look like. You could do a black fabric, if you will, like a regular, just a color that is in some of the prints you have, and then use a variety of prints and then mix it up from there. That's totally up to you. So you can make like an I Spy quilt, like for children, where it could be, different prints that you had left over from collections. This could be, your greens could be Ankara. So you could get African print, all that you have left over in your stash. Take those, make those blocks. I wouldn't do them any smaller than 5 inches. That's up to you. And I would absolutely use 10 inches, but 10 by 10 is going to give you 20. Take out the seam is 19 and a half. So you're going to end up with a big block. And if you have the room for it, for your mat, work, absolutely. And it's going to go faster. We did the disappearing 9 patch, I want to say, with Julian. Julian used 10, he used the layer cakes, and he was lickety split done before everybody else, because he used bigger blocks. And so to achieve the same size quilt, it didn't take as many as it did for those of us that were using 5-inch blocks. His were like 10, 3 by 10. They were 30 inches side by side to start. So shrink out about 2 inches. He ends up with, like a 26-inch block at the least. And so 26-inch blocks, he got 1, 2, 3 across, 3 down, and he had a big quilt. So it's totally up to you. The bigger the block, then, the faster it is to get it together. However, the design is not as prominent as it is as if you were using smaller blocks. Totally up to you. Especially if you're using a nice size print, you may want to go with a bigger block. So I have these together. Remember, we said the first thing we're going to do is flip. And I do it, it doesn't matter. I go from right to left. You can absolutely go from left to right, but go in the same direction. So I'm going to take the first 2, one on the top, one on the bottom, flip them to the wrong side so that right sides are together, keeping them in the same order. And this is key for me because that way I keep the units together. I'm going to take them to my machine and stitch a 1/4 inch. Now, while I'm sitting here and saying 9 patch, even though this is 4 patch, okay. The great thing about this is the method for the 9 is almost similar to the 4, except for how we cut them up when we finish. But again, that's totally up to you how you want to do this. And again, you'll notice my green was on top for the first block, black is on top for the second. These two are upside down, but right sides together. And I leave them in that way. I don't have to do it that way, but I do it this way because I'm keeping them together in units. And that way, when I keep the units together, it allows me to create the 4 patches a little bit faster, because I don't have to line anything up, and I don't have to remember, like, if you're like me, sometimes you knock things off the table and they fall on the floor, and you're like, how come I don't have? And then I mess something up, and that's usually because I didn't keep them in the order I was supposed to keep them in. So I have a string here. It's a chain of 4. You'll see that they go black, green from your side. It's the reverse for me. And I'm not going to cut the first one. I'm going to cut the second one. Okay. So I'm going to leave those together. And I will open these up. And because I kept them in that chain unit, I can see the 4 patch. And then I'm just going to lay the next one on top of that one. Okay, so working in like this assembly line method helps me to get to the next part and see the progress as I'm going. I can absolutely do these blocks one by one. If you are a stickler for ironing, you could iron these. Again, because it's only affecting a small part of the seam, I can just do these without. So it's just a little bit of a tug, not much, just to get those seams to line up. Then I use my fingers to kind of mush them so that if they're not quite there, my fingers are helping to get those seams to nest, to butt up right against each other. And then let me do this one. Okay, so, and then we will do this. And I know that I could be doing some things so that I, will be talking about something other than quilting. And I hope that I'm going to do justice to this. But let me get this one done. So I'm just going to take it to my machine and stitch. And let me go to my uh, okay. Where am I at? Okay, I think I'm here. See post. Okay. So while I am here working on this one, let me just stop for a second for anyone who has come in while there are a few people here. Let me go back over. So my name is Jennifer Hale, and I am here for Sunday service for Black Sewing Network. I am not going to do justice to any of the spiels that Carmen gives, so I'm not even going to try. Um, but I do want to announce that there is the International Sewing Day of Service, and that is going to take place next month, November 15th. And it is happening all over the place. So I know, like right offhand, I know that it's taking place in Texas. So I know that they are doing a project there. I know that they are doing one in Baltimore, South Florida Frock Tales, Montserrat is they're doing a project. So there are, let me see, Dallas, Chicago, Philly, Baltimore, South Florida, Atlanta, Montserrat. They are all doing projects November 15th, different times. And so if you are anywhere near any of those areas, absolutely go to the Black Sewing Network. You can go to the Instagram, you could go to their webpage to get more information about that and to sign up to participate. So, of course, can't talk about it if I'm not about it. So, yes, I signed up because I will be there to help out with the International Day of Sewing. I love it. So I know that different people are making different things, from dresses to the bags that are for females' personal items, teaching children how to sew bags. So there's a lot of different projects that are going on. Like I said, I'm not about to sit here and do a disservice to saying everything the way that it should be said, but absolutely go on to the Black Sewing Network's website, check it out, and sign up. So Philly is what Philly is, because we do what we do. So come out and hang out with the folks from Philly. Carmen found a new spot, and Carmen is a vibe. Now, I'm not going to say, because I really think that all the rest of the people that are having something, they are a vibe too. So I know it's going to be a day of sewing and a day of fun. So absolutely sign up for it and participate if you can. If you can't, please make sure that you are like possibly donating to the cause. So I know that Black Sewing Network has a what is it called? There's a donation link. Okay, that took a minute. So there's a donation link for the Black Sewing Network, where you can absolutely donate. So if you can't attend, you absolutely could donate to the cause. I know that in Montserrat, they are also asking for donations as well. It's a lot harder because I was going to ship the stuff to I was going to ship the stuff there because I got stuff, and I'm just going to have to bring it to Philly because I was donated like fabric and thread, and I'm not going to use all that in a lifetime, so I need to get rid of some of that, so I'm going to donate that to the cause. So there's plenty of things that can be donated financially, so your time, like I said, some come with a small fee, which is fine because venues cost money, food costs money. So absolutely, it is about the fun and the fellowship. So if you can hang out, please come out and join the Black Sewing Network in any one of the areas, any one of the groups that are all doing this great day of service. Oh, and look, just coming in the room, just coming in the room. I was just talking about you. So Unsocial is in the room. So again, they are doing theirs. I think she's teaching girls how to sew. And I think that's absolutely fabulous because somebody has to have enough patience to work with kids, because once 3 o'clock comes, I don't want to see nobody else's child. So I'm not really trying to do that after school because I donate enough of my time during the school day. But I love it. I absolutely love working with students. I love that. Okay, so we have sewn all our units together. I'm going to press them. Then again, please make sure you are checking out the Black Sewing Network. I know that there should be quite a few things coming up. And I don't know if Carmen is in here or not, but Christmas is around the corner. So we do usually do the 12 days of blackness. So yeah, that's around the corner. So I know we have to start planning for that. And I am all things Christmas. So absolutely, I like, yes, yes, I will be participating. Yes. I know that there was some talk about doing the drive for the students at the Benjamin Franklin High School again. So I believe that Black Sewing Network is going to do that unless they changed it, which is fine. Um, so I know we have that one. So I think like those are like the two major things. Hey, Eves. I think those are like the major two things that'll probably be for the rest of the year. Because I know that Carmen has been working hard. And, like in whatever way that I can support her, absolutely. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Here to support. Because I know what I couldn't do. Okay. So here we go again. And that line is lined up. But let me show you. This one is not so much. And from a distance, it doesn't look like it, but it is. It's a little off. And that's okay. If it's not okay with you to be a little off, you can rip it out and do it again. If I don't have to, I ain't ripping nothing out. It's got to be a major thing for me to rip it out. Next thing I'm going to do, and I'm using 3 inches. Again, my block started off at 6.5 inches. Why? Because the ruler was 6.5 inches. So I cut the width of the fabric 6.5, and then I subcut them 6.5. So each of my pieces were 6.5. So that's why I use that. And then now, because the block should finish at about 3 inches, I'm using 3 inches as my halfway point. You could change it and it could look a little different, a little skinnier. That's up to you to play around with it. Hey, Shamir. Um, so that's totally up to you which way you want to go. 3 inches here. I'm counting twice to make sure that it's 3 inches. I'm lining this up with that line so that my everything is straight. I should have 3 inches all the way throughout. And then I cut. I choose to turn mine. You can mark your ruler if you like. There are quilters who will use painter's tape. They will mark the ruler to the 3-inch mark, so that way they remember that it's always 3 inches. They don't have to keep counting and then double checking, because they know it's already marked at 3 inches for. Okay, and then we're doing the same thing, 3 inches from the center all the way around. But those 2 long strips are the only 2 long strips. These 2 are going to be shorter strips. Okay, I think I got my whole spiel out. So with the part of doing this, how is everyone doing today? Are you sewing? Are you just hanging out for right now? And let me put it back together just so that we can see it. Okay. So that's that one. Let me go ahead and do the second one just so that I get that one out the way. Because we're doing these in pairs, and I just want to show you what happens, why I think it's easier to do it this way than it is to do it one by one. Okay, Miss Cynthia is sewing. What are you making, darling? How are you today? Make sure this is straight. But then again, most people in Black Sewing Network, I know y'all are sewing. And if you're not sewing, you're getting ready to sew. And then we'll go here. Okay. And then we'll subcut these. So we have 2 short pieces, 2 long pieces, and that square in the center of the block. Just make sure everything is lined up. Okay. This is all for the second block. Let me move this back down here. So I do like to keep everything together. So then that way, if the block was a little off, then that whole block will be a little off, rather than messing up another block. So I'm just stacking one on top of the other. Now, ask Jennifer if she still has a full one. Yep. Okay. So this was the 4 patch. Ooh, a swimsuit. So here's the 4 patch. Lift the 4 patch up. And then here is the hat 4 patch. Remember, we said all we need to do is turn that 90 degrees. And if we put it back together, we now have, oh, I got 2 of them over here. That's the cut one. We now have, let's get the finished one. I told you I forgot that fast where it was. We have this. Now this is a little bit smaller than this because it doesn't have the seam allowances out yet. This is just butted one up against the other, but this is how it'll look when it is finished. So we already have 4 that are done. This will be 2 more. So the process is moving quickly. And again, just as a reminder, original, most people do a disappearing 4 patch will look like this. So this is not the one that I am doing. I am doing one that looks a little bit differently. These pieces right here are out of the way. We're working on the center piece. Right now, all the pieces line up all the way around. When I sew the seams here and here, it's going to shrink this by a 1/2 inch or on either side. So 1/2 inch on this side, 1/2 inch on this side. So this whole unit will be 1 inch smaller than these units here. And that's because of the seams that I have. And that's fine. You don't want to do anything different because of that. We're going to do that when we attach these two to this unit once this is put together, and then we'll trim it up. So when we put everything together again, it'll look like this. Those 1/2 inches will be the overlap, and then we'll just trim those off. Okay, so the thing I like about this is that when you leave the units together, or you make more than one at a time, now you can do that same type of chain piecing, and it's a lot easier to do it than when you only have one. Because when you have one and you have to go do the other side, you immediately have to clip it from off of your chain. This way I always have one attached to the chain as I'm getting ready to start the next one. So this is the one attached, and then start the second one. Let me get rid of that little tail. Line everything up. Take everything to the machine, 1/4 inch. And again, we can make a decision. I already have in mind what I want to do with this, but you can make a decision on how many units you want to make. And this could be an easy 4 units, and this could be a table runner, 4 or more units, depending on how long you want that table runner to be and how big your squares are. This could be an easy 16 units, 15, 16 units, and this could be a small quilt. It could be a baby quilt. It could be a lap quilt, depending on how big your blocks are. You can use them to make pillows. You can use them to make tote bags. I have an orphan block on the back of one of the jackets that I made. All I'm doing is cutting off that one unit while I'm leaving the other unit there. So you absolutely can use these any way that you want. So if you're sewing along and you're like, okay, one and done, then, think about what you can use that one block for. Again, the colors themselves do not have to, they do not have to reflect the same grid that I have with just 2 colors. You could use 3 colors, you could use 4 or more colors. So it's totally up to you to decide how scrappy you want this to be. So we're just going through now and pressing the unit. Again, I press it closed, and then when I open it up, it just helps it helps the thread to just kind of flatten out a little bit. Even though I say to myself, like, how is the thread not flat? Not unless when it comes off the spool and it goes through the needle, it kind of it kind of makes itself round again. I don't know. But I would think that if it's on the spool, it's already flat. But that's okay. I follow the directions that people tell me to follow. Okay. So here's the one unit. And again, for these units, you're just going to line up the center. Do not line up the edges because that'll throw it off. So you're lining up your center seams. You're going to clip. You will be left with, see how much is left over, which is fine. You can either clip, or I, in this case, will just hold it. I'm making sure that my hand placement is where it needs to be so that both feed through the way that I want them to feed through. My bottom did not go where it's supposed to go. Okay. Sometimes your machine, and just be careful of your seams, your machine will want to push your seam back towards you. So just check to make sure that seam is going in the right direction before the needle runs over it. Otherwise, you will have a twisted seam. And sometimes it matters and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, the second one is done. We're going to, the second second center is done. So we're just going to open that up and press that. The bottom or top, whatever you want to call it, for the the first one is on. I'm going to come back here, make sure everything is right. Again, line up those centers. Take your time there. And even with taking your time, sometimes they're not going to line up. But guess what? They're going to be closer if you take your time to do it. And it'll just be off a little bit rather than being off a lot. You do not want them off a lot because then it looks wonky. Unless that's the look you're going for. Now, if you're going for that look, rock on. But if that's not the look you're going for, then don't do it. Okay. So one side is on. We're going to come back. Again, remember, easiest way is to know that it's giving you that checkerboard look. So if it's giving you that, then you know that you have it turned the right way for the top. You don't want the greens on the same side. You don't want the blacks on the same side. Now, if you're using more than one color, then you're really going to have to pay attention to make sure that whatever the outside block is the same as the top block. And if you set yourself up with the first one, like you work your way all the way through the first one, then every other one will make sense as you're going through it because you'll see the pattern beginning to form. Okay. And then we have this last one. So again, I don't want to do this. And it's going to give me a different look. Notice how this part goes out. I don't want that. I want it so that this part is going in. So that's how I can tell that I'm doing it the way that it's supposed to be done. But like I said, I have blocks that I've either ripped out or are in my frustration pile. Because if I messed it up and I don't feel like taking it out, it goes into the frustration pile until I feel like dealing with it. And there are a lot of things in my frustration pile. Okay. So we'll get rid of that. So here we go again. Notice how those 1/2 inches are there. We'll trim those off. So we're not worried about it, but we should not have at this point ends matching. If you got ends and ends matching, then you are going to have a whole bunch of waving because you had to do a whole bunch of pulling to get your fabric, unless you're using some sort of stretch fabric. Your fabric should not stretch almost a 1/2 inch to meet the other side. A 1/4 inch, maybe. A 1/2 inch, nah. So if it's stretched like that, you did a whole bunch of stretching. and it is going to create a whole bunch of waving. Um, I'm just giving it a good press. So that I can square it up and know that just about everything is laying relatively decently flat. Maybe not laying as flat as I want it to, and that's fine. Now, when you subcut, and I'll show you what happened, I pulled my fabric. And I'm going to have to go back in at some point and fix that. You got to be careful with how you pull your fabric, because subcutting it, there's no amount of back stitching you could do, because remember, this was cut at a 3-inch mark. So because this was cut at a 3-inch mark, when I accidentally just tugged it a little bit, it separated. So I can just go back to my machine and just do a little 1/4-inch stitch over that, but just be careful that you're not pulling a lot. It'll happen, and it's not the end of the world, but just catch it now. Don't catch it when you're trying to quilt, because then it really separates and it creates some other problems. So just a couple little back stitches to back tack it in place. I don't have to go all the way down. Why is this? Okay. And then that'll leave that where it's supposed to be. Okay. Again, I'm going to take my ruler, line up, in this case for me, 3 inches. Make sure everything is lined up on that line. Turn it and do the same thing on the other side. And again, I can use my my other ruler, my square, to do this. I don't have to do this with this type of ruler. That's just preference. But I can do it with my square ruler if I prefer. Okay, so that one's done. Where's the other one? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 6. And so in the interest of time, I will put some of these units together, and then make a decision as to whether what I want to do for the final result. And remember, I told you there's 2 different ways that I could put this together. I can either have same color on the inside, or I can have a different color. The multicolor, 2 blacks, 2 greens. I can have those in the center. So it's totally up to the designer of the quilt as to which way you want to go. Okay, so I'll do 2 rows of 3. Okay. So again, just to show you that layout, I can take these and then have them look like this, or I can take them and have them look like this and then like this. So I can build them out that way. So I can have a primary design, or it can also then make a secondary design. And secondary meaning that you'll have this cross that will all be the same color, versus a cross that will be different colors because of this look, and then they'll be the same throughout. So you'll have big green patches, big black patches, or you'll have all the same twirls like this. So it's totally up to you which way you want to go for this. If you want, you could get grid paper, color in the grid paper, or you could lay out all your blocks and then decide which way it works best for you. That's totally up to you. I'm leaving it like this. Now, how I'm putting these units together, again, is up to you, and it depends on how many units you have. If you have a lot of squares, let's say 16, you can put the squares together in rows, 4 across, next 4, next 4, next 4, and then sew the rows together, or the columns, your choice. Or you could do them in patches of 4 as well. That's up to you. So I am going to, let's first just do a row because it's going to be a row anyway to start. It was a 4 patch. So we're going to take our 2, however the layout is. I am going to match up my center seams. And the end seams. Take it to my machine, 1/4 inch. And again, depending on what we're making, if we're doing a table runner, most table runners have 1 block, but there is nothing wrong with having 2. It's just going to be a wider table runner. It depends on how big your table is. What I like about using 2 colors is that you can go with a theme easy. So I could do like the Halloween, like even though these colors could be Halloween colors. So I could go with Halloween colors. I could go with you know, purple and green, the lime green. I could go with red and green, silver and black, red and white, pink and red, dark, a dark green and black. I can make one single color and work through these very easily. Or I could do a mixture of colors. So, and then just use this for like a table runner. So I can keep going like this to have a look for a table runner if that's what I choose to do. Or the same way that I made that 4 patch, which is what I did. I sewed the 2 units together. And now I can flip this and then sew these units together, which would give me a decent size for the beginning of a table topper. My units are about 11 inches, 11 and a half. So this is going to give me a about a once oops, my thread was too short, it popped out. It's going to give me about 11 and a half, take off a 1/4. So it's going to give me about a 21 inch square at this point. And then again, 2 squares will give me about a 40 inch. So about a good 16 blocks would give me a decent size baby quilt. If that's what I were going for. Again, a baby quilt could be a table topper. It could be a wall hanging. That's totally up to you, what you want to use it for. If you're like me, right now, there aren't a whole lot of babies in the family for me to have to give a baby quilt to anybody. And all my friends are not having babies. They might be having grandbabies. And hopefully they're not calling me to do anything. Okay. And here we go across this one. They're lining up, and I am lining up the seams. It's just easier for me to line the seams up as I go. Okay. Ooh, we got some threads that came through. Just want to get those out of there. Need a little bit of pressing, but here is our 4 patch. And again, this is not, it really isn't a difficult block to put together. I should be able to get the other ones together. This isn't a difficult block to put together. You can put this together relatively easy. And then again, make that decision on what you want the final one to be. I mean, I would start off with a decision, but you know, if you are new to quilting, like I said, you might be over it after the first 4 and be like, it's going to be a table runner. Or you might be over it and say, you know what, I'm good. I'll just do a quick table topper. Or you may want to just go ahead and get everything done and make an actual quilt. Now, I will at the end usually, once everything is together, because then if it shrinks, it all shrinks at the same time. I will go through and then like give it a good steam and a good starch just to lay everything as flat as I could. And then from there, go through the quilting. And before you ask for the quilting, you absolutely could do a stitch in a ditch for this. There are a lot of blocks. And you do not have to worry about, going meandering all over it or sending this out to a long arm. You can absolutely do lines. It's not what I do because I have the long arm, and it's not what I do because I don't mind doing all that extra stuff on my machine, but okay. So depending on where you are in the process, here is the 4 blocks so far that are together. This is on this, it's about 22 inches. So each block is like, it's a little, yeah, it's about 22 and a half. So it's about 22 and a half inches. I said it was about right around there, right? So this is about 22 and a half inches. And this is coming together really great. Again, I can make a decision. I have enough to do the 16 blocks. So I can either go out another 4 and do, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be not 12, and then or I could do 16. So I can go out as wide as I want to finally decide what I want to do. But I do want to say this. Now, I don't remember where I bought this black cotton from. But just because people like to ask about quilters cotton and where you buy it from, notice how you can see the words from my t-shirt through this black. And then, but you can't see it through the green. And I don't think I have another piece of black. It's somewhere else. I have another piece of black where you can't see through it. So this is a very thin quilter's cotton, or this is a different brand. It's like those sheets, like we said, 200 count sheets versus having um like a 400 or a 800 or a 1000 count. So that's the difference in it. Now, is this going to make a difference once I quilt all this? No. But for some people, they like to keep everything the same. And so there are some people who would feel some kind of way as a quilter that, you're using something this thin. This doesn't bother me, but it does bother some people. So there are some people who will absolutely say, they have a certain type of quilter's cotton. So if you're in the store, just kind of hold it up to the light. And if you can see through it, it's a different thread count than this is. It doesn't make it wrong. It just means that it's going to show up a lot different and it's going to act a lot different with your fabric, with your other cottons than it would if you were just using all the same. So I should use all the same of this if I'm doing that, just so that I don't have the mix match, because it's going to possibly act differently when I wash it than this one will. But again, it depends on the manufacturer, it depends on who made it, what lot it is, all the other fun stuff in terms of the final product. But again, we were working on the disappearing 9 patch. We made a small version of a quilt. I will decide on if I what I want to do in terms of making a bigger quilt. Did I say disappearing 9 patch again? Disappearing 4 patch. And again, for what I want it to be. But I wanted to make sure that we kind of went through like what the steps would look like. I wouldn't sit here and go through the whole quilt because the whole quilt is going to take some time to do, but I did want to introduce that part as well as some of the techniques that are required with it. So again, this is the original. Because see, some people cut the whole 4 patch, right? Okay. So here's the original 4 patch. So this is what we start off with. There's nothing wrong with making a quilt out of a 4 patch. There are plenty of rag quilts, regular quilts that everybody makes with 4 patches. It's just 4 different squares. And those squares could all be 2 different colors, 3, 4 different colors. You could have a myriad of different colors. So this is the original 4 patch. From there, most people will turn their 4 patch into something that looks like this. It is totally up to you whether you want to use this look or not. You absolutely can. You could have mixed and matched the look if you preferred. I don't, but for this one you could have. We used the 4 patch that looked like this. And so this is the method that we did in order to get what we have, which is here now. And again, this is 22 by, this is like 22 and a half by 22 and a half. Again, I will probably make 3 more units and then put all those together and then decide from there if I want to add a border or do something else to it. So I will make that decision, show you the final results. But I just wanted to at least get that far to show you how to put the units together, how to create the disappearing 4 patch, some tips and tricks with how to chain piece those units together, how we cut them up, some different techniques that I use for cutting them up, lining up your rulers, things like that. And then, of course, then putting the pieces together for the final result. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. How does Carmen say it? We're here for a good time, not a long time. So, wasn't planning to hold you here too long today. I will work on this offline, so I will see a lot of people on different social media platforms as I am finishing this up because that's what I'll be working on. But thank you for joining me today for Black Sewing Network Sunday service. Quilters edition because the quilters took over today. We will be back to regularly scheduled quilting projects. I will be looking for those quilters to join me. Carmen caught me at the last minute for this one, so I didn't want to tax anybody, but I'm looking for projects in quilters. So let me know what you would like to work on, and we will absolutely work on it. Again, don't forget, we do have our day of service, November 15th. Make sure you go to the Black Sewing Network page to sign up for one of the cities if you are close, or to donate. Like I said, right now, I know Philly is asking for donations, and I know Montserrat is asking for donations. So please check out their pages so that you can support such a worthy cause. Until then, have a good evening. Happy sewing and quilting. I gotta get up.